Welcome to Bible Prayers and Untold Stories, where every whisper verse is truth, and every story brings light to the soul. Let us journey through the sacred words and uncover the wisdom hidden in. They say, the Vatican is nothing but brick walls and murals, but there are rooms that only prayer can open. There are secrets that are not written, but are hidden in the sighs of souls who have prayed for centuries. Behind the throne is darkness, and in that darkness, the last prayer of a pope still echoes. This is not just a story about men, but a story about souls, invisible battles, and the choice between light and power. The story begins not with the accession of a pope, but with a small sob in the darkness, where no one thinks God is listening, the Vatican stone corridors at night, with only the flickering light of candles on the holy statues. There are diseases that do not destroy the body, but silently gnaw at the soul. Power, division, and spiritual Alzheimer's, when a church forgets who it is and for whom it exists. There are places in the world where there is no need to speak, because the stone walls whisper, and if you listen close in the night, you will hear cracks, faint blood stains on the stone, scraps of paper stuck in cracks of the bricks, with Latin scrawled in handwriting. Blood has been spilled here, not the blood of war, but the blood of silence warnings. For the power that lives in the darkness is not Satan in the underworld, but fallen angels in red caps. Alzheimer's of the soul is when the church no longer remembers why it was created. When power is worship and truth is crucified once more, and then the walls begin to whisper. Looking in through the window, the scene is dark, only the light of an oil lamp and a man sitting writing in red ink. Father Lorenzo, about 40 years old, with a determined face, tired eyes, wearing a simple monk's habit, thin but strong. Father Lorenzo himself, writing and mumbling, "If I am not alive tomorrow morning, please someone bring this letter to light. Tell the world that the Vatican is being deceived by those who have sworn to uphold the truth. I saw them in the darkness of the East Corridor, meeting at 3 a.m., no books, only a statement of money transfers." Behind Father Lorenzo, a black-cloaked figure stands outside the door, silently observing without taking his eyes off. Another hand holds a pen, also writing in the darkness. This time it is an elderly nun, copying a diary in silver ink. The nun's voice, old, hoarse, sacred. We used to believe that prayer was enough, but the light cannot prevail if no one dares to open the door. I saw Cardinal Raphael sign the transfer, to hide, not to heal. When I questioned him, he only replied, "Faith does not need truth, it needs silence." A blurry image of a secret meeting. Cardinals sitting in the dark, the light only illuminating their hands, signing their names repeatedly on notes. A young priest is dragged out of the meeting room, his mouth covered, his eyes panicked. Father Lorenzo, whispering, voice trembling, "Lord, if my words are false, punish me, but if they are true, protect my soul before they find my body." The chapel wall, where a manuscript by Father Lorenzo was hidden in a crevice behind the cross. Not all prayers rise to heaven. There are prayers sealed in stone walls, waiting to be found one day, when the truth needs a candle. Vatican courtyard. A white mist covers the tiled roof and the statue of St. Peter. A group of Swiss guards and papal police surround a body covered in a monk's habit, lying motionless in the cold stone courtyard. When a priest falls from a high place, they call it a tragedy. But when he is the last one to hold the truth, they call it an accident. The victim's hand is clutching a broken rosary. A torn page is blown away by the wind. The words "Veritas est periculo," the truth is in danger, are faintly visible. The old cardinal, whispering to the investigating officer, he was not so weak as to commit suicide. And since when in the house of God has anyone chosen to throw himself to the ground as a farewell? Asterisk a dark room, the only light shining on the circular conference table. The cardinals in red sat silently. No one said a word. On the table was the file of the deceased, Father Lorenzo, a young cardinal, hesitating. He sent a warning letter to the 3 people in this room. The senior cardinal interrupting. No one wants a church to be divided by unfounded accusations. Silence is necessary. Father Lorenzo emerged from the room the night before. In the hallway, a figure was waiting. The scene quickly cut, blurred, howling wind, muffled prayers. The window opened. A short scream. Then silence. A young monk stood at a distance, silently watching the place where the body fell. He pulled a small piece of paper from his shirt, a handwritten copy of Father Lorenzo's letter, and tucked it into the middle of the Bible in his hand. The young monk, whispering, "I don't know who killed you, but I know your words will live." Lorenzo's monk's habit flutters in the wind, like a martyr's flag. Father Lorenzo's voice repeating, as if from afar, "If I die for telling the truth, let that death open the door for light." A round conference table. On the table is a file marked Confidential Ecclesi. One page is open. A photo of Father Lorenzo's body. Next to it is a copy of the Latin text that was blown away by the wind the day before. Monsignor Dominus, Papal Security General, silver-haired, cold. The female investigator, Eliana, young, sharp, with troubled eyes. Eliana, flipping to the file. 3 days before his death, Father Lorenzo had a closed meeting with representatives of an independent church in Ukraine. Did he say anything about an external threat? Dominus, not looking at her, even-toned. From Russia, Eliana. All traces point to Russia. Eliana, looking up, slowly. Or does the Vatican want everything to point to Russia? A television news report says Vatican priest closely linked to Eastern European political organization. Then a shot of a cardinal stuffing an envelope into a reporter's hand in the dark. When the truth is so dangerous, people often create a controllable enemy. Eliana, showing another file, face tense. In Father Lorenzo's diary, he wrote, "If I am killed, find someone who never looks at the cross when swearing." Dominus, why was the East Corridor camera turned off for exactly 33 minutes on the night Father Lorenzo died? Dominus, silence, then smiles slightly, eyes darken. You are still young, and you still believe that the truth can save the church. The wall behind Dominus, a map of the world. On it, red dots are scattered in Europe, Russia, but also quietly appear in Rome. Eliana steps out of the room, holding a file. As the door closes, the camera zooms in on the Latin inscription engraved on the wall. "Non temibo mala," said Malum S. Hick. "I will not fear evil, but evil is here." The stone corridor in the basement of an ancient convent. Sister Lucia, about 70 years old, stooped, light-footed, uses an iron key to open a thick oak door covered with moss. Not all prayers fly to heaven. Some prayers are buried deep in stone, where men dare not touch. But the soul still finds its way back. Lucia pushes the door open. In the dim candlelight, a room filled with papers, handwritten letters, manuscripts, rotting diaries, carefully wrapped in wooden boxes and holy cloths. The camera pans over handwritten titles in brown ink. Confessio ignis, confession of fire. Vox silens, silent voice. Liber mortuorum, Book of the Dead. Asterisk, the man from the opening scene is still kneeling in prayer. Sweat is beading his forehead, and he holds an old rosary in his hand. The light from the stained glass window reflects on his face, creating a soft halo, like a halo of ghosts. He mutters, without raising his head, "If they died for their prayers, I wish to live to say what they never said." Lucia gently opens a diary. Her voice trembled, reading aloud a passage. Sister Lucia's voice, vibrating, reverent. March 3rd, 1997. They made me kneel for 9 hours. I did not resist, but I still keep this book as a witness for those who come after me. Because the true light does not come from a throne, but from one who kneels and is not afraid of the darkness. The basement door opened to the chapel's stained glass window. The morning sunlight shone through the glass painted with an angel, shining directly on the open diary. The page fluttered, stopping at the last line. Veritas non perit. The truth never dies. And then, from buried prayers, a voice will arise, strong enough to break down every wall, even the wall of silence. Pope Francis, dressed in a simple white robe, walks slowly down the ancient corridor with 2 Swiss guards behind him. The dim light from the stained glass windows casts its shadow on the wall, like the shadows of many people walking together. The Vatican is not only a citadel of faith, it is also a fortress of ancient power, where prayers collide with millennial conspiracies. And the man in white was chosen not to sit, but to face. The Pope stops before a large bronze door engraved with the symbols of both the church and the court, the cross and the crown. A camera pans overhead. The Vatican appears labyrinthine. Beneath the dome, there are countless basements, secret passages, archives, and unmarked doors. The cardinal accompanying him in a low voice. The Vatican is not only a place of souls, it is also a state, with its own treasury, its own soldiers, its own laws, and things not written in the Bible. The Pope opens a door to the secret room, where the sealed records of previous popes are kept. There is no cross, no statue of the Virgin Mary, just steel shelves, cold walls, white electric lights. He stops in front of a filing cabinet marked Secretum Consistorium, 1939 to 2013. He pulls out a document. Inside are copies of financial transactions with international corporations, a list of priests who have been transferred to secret areas, and a file on a disappearance in 1978. This is a room that many call the godless room, because here, human reason is greater than the teaching from above. As the Pope walks deeper into the dark corridor, the lights go out one by one behind him. The camera pans slowly along the walls. Stone statues suddenly appear to come to life, their eyes following his every step. A statue of a saint holding a sword, its hand cracked, dried blood in the crack. A door slammed behind him, but no one was there. 3 knocks came from behind the wall. The Pope praying softly, "Do not let me be lost in the darkness. Lord, if you are still here." In the closed room, the cardinals were discussing, but no one mentioned the Pope. A statue of Christ covered in a black veil stood in the corner. The senior cardinal, voice cold, expressionless. He comes from another world, from the slums of Buenos Aires. But this is Rome. Here, we keep history, we do not change it. And so, the words of reform hit the stone walls, and the whispers of the invisible force penetrated every crack in the throne. The Pope walked out of the room. In his hand was a dossier no one had ever dared to make public. He looks up at the crucifix hanging at the end of the corridor, the light from the roof falling directly into his eyes, filled with silence. The camera pans slowly behind him, then cuts to an anonymous hand closing a book titled Ecclesia Occulta, Hidden Church. To reform a church requires more than faith. It requires the courage to enter where the light itself fears to shine. It is called the Blood Report. 600 pages of sin and truth. An indictment not of the world, but of the church itself. Who wrote that report? The chosen cardinals? Or is it God himself who reveals the corruption hidden in the white robes? Benedict's bedroom. Late at night. The wind whistles outside the glass door. A single candle burns low. He dreams. A recurring dream. The dream. He sees himself entering a ruined church. The statue of the saint is covered. The altar is cracked. On the table are 3 cups of wine, one red with blood, one black, one broken. A faceless priest looks at him, asking, "If God is true, why are you silent?" He wakes up with a start, cold sweat, eyes wild. Benedict walks through the Curia corridor, slowly. The cardinals stand on either side. No one looks at him. Only the sound of his cane on the floor echoes. A whisper from the darkness, repeated. You're not allowed to open it. You are not allowed to speak. You are only allowed to exist. His face, where the eyes seem to have lost their light, leaving only the weariness of besieged soul. The Pope kneels alone in the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo's ceiling above seems to cover the world. The sound of the rosary beads falling on the cold stone. He whispers, almost imploringly, "Lord, if I am a stone blocking the path of light, then let me disappear." Adam reaches out to touch God, but the space between his fingers never closes. And in that moment, the world changes. A pope has chosen to renounce his throne, a decision unprecedented in centuries. February 11th, 2013. The news spread around the world. Newspapers, people, parishes were shocked. People shed tears in St. Peter's Square. The television stations ran the headline. Breaking, Pope Benedict XVI to resign. The bells from all over the churches rang out like a death knell. 3 days and 3 nights they toll, not to weep for one man, but to announce that the throne is empty and the darkness has begun to move. Benedict stood by the window, looking down at the Vatican one last time. On the table was a folded papal robe. He placed his hand on the cross. Saying nothing, the camera zoomed out slowly, and light from outside poured into the room, highlighting the dust covering the Bible and a Latin inscription on the edge of the table. Ubit Deus tacent, veritas plorat. When God is silent, truth weeps. The stained glass windows, moonlight slanted to the statue of the Archangel Michael, glowing brightly in the night. The wind gently pushed the red brocade curtains, creating the feeling that the breath of heaven was seeping into the cold room. Pope Benedict XVI, dressed in a thick white cassock, sat alone at his antique walnut desk. On the desk was a large envelope sealed with red wax, its seal engraved with the symbol of the cross keys of St. Peter, the Vatican's top secret symbol. His hand, slightly trembling, held a silver letter opener. The sound of the knife cutting to the wax was very faint, but in the silence, it sounded like the snapping of an invisible string. Inside was a document about 600 pages thick, bound in black thread and labeled in Latin. Refero sanguinis, secretum consistorii, blood report, top secret from the College of Cardinals. An indictment not for a human court, but for a holy throne defiled. Passages from the file, photographs of strange bank accounts and the names of fictitious dioceses, a map of the movements of the accused priest, but transferred. A list of silent brothers, those who mysteriously disappeared after denouncing the Curia. All were stamped verum non publicare, truth not published. Benedict read each page, his lips pressed tightly together. His expression changed from calm to bewilderment, then to melancholy. A tear fell silently onto the edge of the paper. He murmured, as if confessing, "We have become the memory of our own sins." He put down his pen, walked over to the crucifix hanging on the wall. From behind his shoulder, the Pope's shadow was projected onto the face of Christ, like two figures overlapping. He whispered, "Father, is this judgment from you, or is it the last temptation from the old one?" Benedict, now back at his desk, placed his hand on the report. The only light was from a nearly exhausted candle. The wind blew hard, shaking the glass frame, but he remained motionless. In that dark night, there was no voice from heaven. There was only a report, and a soul with no place to stay. The large bed where Benedict lay on his side, moonlight streaming through the curtains onto his face. The dim light seemed to blend with the stone face. On the bedside table was an open Bible, the pages turned slightly by the wind, stopping at the passage. Et lux in tenebris lucet, et tenebrium non comprehenderit. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness does not perceive it. Benedict in the dream, dressed in white barefoot, was entering a ruined church. The ceiling was cracked. Dust was falling from the frescoes. The altar was overturned. The cross was broken in two. Fresh blood dripped from the candlestick onto the corporal. On the table were 3 cups. The first cup contained wine, the red glow of fresh blood. The second cup was as black as ash. The third cup was broken. Inside was a rusty key. He approached. A faceless priest stand behind the altar, holding a scorched book in his hand. Faceless priest, voice echoing from underground. "You read the report. You saw blood in the chalice. Then why are you silent?" Benedict, confused, hands shaking. "I don't know if it's the truth or the final trap." Priest, "Then what you choose? The cross or the throne?" The wind blows hard. The statue of the Virgin Mary in the dream cracks in two. Inside are thousands of pieces of paper with unanswered prayers. Priest continued, "And these prayers, can you bear them all in silence?" Benedict wakes up with a start. Cold sweat soaks his shirt. The candle has gone out. Outside the window, a bell rings softly in the distance. He sits up, takes the Bible. His eyes scanned the open page, and he repeated the words. Et lux in tenebris lucet. The light still shines in the darkness. He whispered, "So, if I were the one who holds the key, would I dare open the gates of hell?" Benedict XVI, holding the Refero Sanguinis in his hand, walked slowly through the Curia corridor. 2 rows of tall stone columns, the golden light shining from above, cast a long, distorted shadow at his feet. Every step was accompanied by the soft tapping of his cane, regular, resonant, but lonely. There are corridors where the truth cannot pass, because every brick is built with compromise and silence. On the left, a group of cardinals stood chatting, but when Benedict passed, they fell silent. No one bowed. No one looked him in the eye. A young cardinal whispers to the one next to him. Young cardinal, in a low, cold voice. He is weak. Soon, we need someone who can keep the peace. A statue of St. Michael, the archangel, with his sword pointing to ground, covered in dust. A candle on the side altar has been extinguished by someone. A light smoke lingers. Benedict puts his hand on the wall. Spiderweb-like cracks can be seen spreading from the old stone slabs. He enters the Curia's inner meeting room. The light is dim. The cardinals sit in a circle, their eyes cold, no greetings. Benedict, in a hoarse, sincere voice. I have read the report. If this is true, we need to act. A senior cardinal, interrupting in a hard voice. The truth is sometimes a dangerous weapon, and the church does not need more injuries. Benedict, looking up, his eyes old but sharp. Aren't we called the gatekeepers? Who is holding the door for whom? Silence filled the room. A clock chimed 3 times. No one answered. Benedict walked out of the conference room. The door closed behind him. The camera followed him. He was back in the long hallway, alone. No one pushed him down, but every hand was drawn back. No one covered his mouth, but every ear was muted. The light faded. Only the sound of the cane tapping on the stone floor. Each sound, each step, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, the ceiling painted Genesis, appeared dimly in the candlelight. The space was quiet, empty. A single figure, Pope Benedict XVI, knelt before the altar. He is not wearing a papal robe, just a white cassock, holding a worn wooden rosary. And then he came to the place where people usually choose popes. But this time, he came to choose renunciation. Benedict, whispering, eyes closed, Father, if my presence prevents the light from passing through, please guide me out of the shadow of this very throne. Michelangelo painted Adam's hand almost touching God's hand, but there is still a small gap. He looks up, his eyes filled with tears. I have tried to hold this chair like a cross, but perhaps what I need to hold is the truth that no one wants to hear. He bends down to kiss the ground. A small drop of blood falls from his left hand, where there is a scratch from the papal ring. On the ground, the candlelight forms the shape of a key and a closed door. The lights in the chapel flicker. From the frescoes, the ancient figures seem to be looking down. Benedict, quietly, this office is not a power. It is a burden. And sometimes the way to keep the church holy is to step down from the holy place. He rises slowly. From behind, a cold blue light falls from the window onto his silhouette. Long, solitary, but upright, he places his hand on his heart, where the small cross is, and walks slowly out of the chapel. There is no voice from heaven. No angel appears. Only one man, and a silence loud enough to turn history. St. Peter's Square. Thick gray clouds, thousands of people gathered, confused eyes, rosaries in hand. A large screen broadcast live from the Vatican. I, Benedict XVI, declare that I will renounce the ministry of Bishop of Rome on February 28th at 8 p.m. The crowd fell silent. A bell rang from St. Peter's Tower. Then a second, then a third, more and more insistently. An old priest in Africa burst into tears before a statue of the Virgin Mary. A pilgrim in the Philippines knelt in the middle of the street, praying. In New York, the news flashed across Times Square. Pope resigns. First in 600 years. The world held its breath. The faithful shed tears. And the darkness began to move. The throne in the audience hall was empty. The white cloak was folded neatly on a chair. Benedict's fisherman's ring, removed, lay in a wooden box that was half closed. A young monk walked by, bowing deeply. No one spoke. In the sky, doves flew wildly. Some caught in the strange wind, fly in the opposite direction. The screen slowly dimmed, leaving only the image of the cross casting a shadow over the empty square. A final voice from somewhere unknown, and when the last bell is rung, the gatekeeper has left the city. But the question remains, who is the gatekeeper when there is no one inside? Buenos Aires. Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio is cleaning his small room, his simple cassock, the fan creaking. Outside, the sound of children playing ball, ordinary life, no Vatican, no gold. On the table is an unopened letter, sent from Rome, inviting him to attend the conclave. Bergoglio, speaking softly, as if to God, "Father, leave me among the poor." He is about to throw the letter in the trash, but there is a knock on the door. An old woman in a purple cloak stands outside the door, her eyes deep and bright. Her name is La Bruja, the witch, Bergoglio's spiritual friend since his youth. La Bruja, looking him straight in the eye. "Last time you hid? This time you must go." Bergoglio, "I do not belong in those corridors." La Bruja, face softening, "But that is why that door will open for you." She puts into his hand an old woolen scarf, inside of which is a small piece of paper with a Bible verse. Ecce homo, this is the man. Vatican College of Cardinals. The space is dark, lit only by hundreds of candles. Cardinals from different countries sit in a circle, their red robes like a sea of fire. The wind whistles through the dome. Someone recites a prayer in Latin. It is Bergoglio's turn. He stands up without his writing, with only a rosary. Bergoglio, in a firm voice, not high but deep, "We have forgotten the poor. We have built stone walls around the faith, while the world needs a church that listens." Silence. Eyes on each other. A few candles extinguish themselves, but the flame on the candle in front of him is still burning, brighter than the dome. Cold white light penetrates through a glass pane, shining right on the spot where Bergoglio is sitting after speaking. A white bird, it is unclear whether it is a dove or a small swan, flies into the meeting room and lands on the wooden platform near his feet. A cardinal whispers to the one next to him, "I saw this once in 1978. Not all calls come from the mouths of mortals. There is a call from silence, and the chosen one is the one who said no." Bergoglio, the candlelight reflects in his eyes. He bows his head in prayer, his hands clasping the rosary. From outside, a bell rang once, softly, as if to signal what was about to happen. The Sistine Chapel, where the flickering yellow candlelight reflected off the red robes of the cardinals. They sat in silence. The sound of pens and paper, the soft tapping of a bell echoed in the silence. A final ballot was dropped into the box. The small bell rang to signal the end of the sixth round of voting. Asterisk, and on the sixth time, the number 6 of humanity, of imperfection. A name was raised, a man who never expected to be chosen. The ballot was drawn. A solemn Latin voice read aloud, "Georgius Marius Bergoglio." White light suddenly shone through the glass panes in the Sistine ceiling, directly onto the stone pedestal in front of him. The cardinals were silent. A few bowed their heads. No applause, no cheers. Bergoglio stood up. He clasped his hands, bowed deeply, and said nothing. A white bird flew into the chapel again, this time onto the ballot box. A cardinal approached and asked him which name he would like. Bergoglio, very softly, almost whispering, "I choose the name Francis," because he loved the poor and feared power. The man who bore that name entered the darkness through his humility. Before going out onto the balcony to make his announcement, Bergoglio asked to be allowed into the small room at the back, the prayer room of the new popes. No cameras were allowed in. Only the door was closed. The candlelight inside shone through the crack in the door. No sound, only the image of him kneeling alone, his head bowed to the cold stone floor, arms open in the shape of a cross. No words. Bells ring. White smoke rises. St. Peter's Square erupts. Flags flutter. People hold their breath. The camera turns from behind him. Bergoglio steps onto the balcony. The spotlight shines. But he does not speak immediately. He stands there, silent for 12 seconds, looking deep into the sea of people, holding a small cross in his palm. Bergoglio, in a low, warm, but slightly trembling voice, "Dear brothers and sisters, I have come from far away, but I bring the closest thing, prayer." He bows his head. Everyone below bows too. When he returns to the back of the balcony, 2 cardinals stand on either side. He holds their hands. Tightly, the spotlight fades. Only one last sentence rings out. It is unclear whether he is speaking to them or to himself. Francis whispering, "Do we have the grace to fight this darkness?" Seen from the Vatican dome. The new pope stands between night and light. Above, a meteor streaks by. The bells continue to ring. People choose the strong to hold the throne, but heaven chooses the weak to carry the cross.